we had like 2018-19 when computer vision's aha moment happened, and
Yeah.
then the chat gpt came last year, and the nlp's aha moment happened.
Correct.
And I predict and I feel really that the next aha moment will be about combination of these two.
Hi, Sandeep. First of all, welcome on the show, Leading with Data, and thanks a lot for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you've been traveling a lot lately, and obviously with the kind of demand in the industry right now, thanks a lot for taking this time out. And I am personally looking forward to learning from your experience and your perspective. So, looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Kunal. I'm excited to discuss, and thanks for building amazing community. I had amazing experience at Bangalore Hackfest.
Mhm.
Um, it was quite enlightening to see the AI work happening in Indian landscape, and you had amazing crowd, of course. Thank you.
Sure, great. In fact, that's where I would want to start. So last time when we met at Data Hack Summit, right?
Yeah.
How was the experience in terms of the overall summit and then the interactions with the audience and the subject? I mean, how was your overall experience with Data Hack Summit?
Yeah, so to put in perspective, I have attended almost every single AI conference you can imagine in the world, like
Mhm.
be it PyTorch DevCon, TensorFlow DevCon, ICMLs, or anything. I have always attended many of the conferences. And after having been to so many conferences, when I attended Data Hack Summit at Bangalore, I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised that you have like very good mix of people, and that is one of the main criteria how interesting the conference gonna be.
Mhm.
Because you had like um, industry experts. Same time, he had a very hands-on people who have built whole thing by learning by themselves. For example, all the Kaglers, and so I had a very good experience um, talking to a lot of folks. Almost every single person I talked to
Mhm.
was very interesting enough to talk about AI.
Mhm.
So that's the first thing. But the second thing, which I think people take for granted, that it was very well organized. The agenda, the seamlessness of flow of talks and all, and there was some logical clustering in the talks.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like talks immediately next to each other had a
Yeah.
very good logical justification why they are together. At
Mhm.
least I felt that.
Right.
So it was very good, very nicely done. And I imagine I was talking to few folks at Analytics Vidhya. Maybe you guys should do next conference in Santa Clara because yeah,
Great.
because here we have a lot of need and thirst for conferences like that.
Mhm. Great. And you actually have experience of both the ecosystems, the ecosystem of AI professionals in India and in the Bay Area as well. Uh, how do you compare the two? What are some of the, let's say, strengths of one and the strengths of other? And then I mean, how would you compare the two ecosystems in general?
Yeah, actually, thanks to you that you asked this question, and this question is of really a significant perspective, in the sense. So what happens, especially in Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, Silicon Valley, as we call it, um, here we have a different tonality of the AI landscape compared to Europe or say in India. One thing about, so here what happens, most of the discussions which we do are normally in this space of extending the field, in the sense if there is a new technology, probably say there's some new paper being written by folks here
Mhm.
or universities, and it happens to be that Stanford and Berkeley both are here, and there's a lot of research coming in. So it has a more of researchy tone to AI landscape here.
Hmm.
While of course there are a lot of AI engineers, but what I realized after talking to a lot of friends in India, and of course at Data Hack Summit, um, AI landscape have a higher potential to productize these AI technologies.
It's more
So,
application focused.
yeah, so application oriented adoption of these latest and greatest is much more at a higher rate there, because every single person I met at the conference and the workshop which I did,
Mm-hmm.
almost everybody was trying to build something with these technologies. So it is good for an ecosystem like India, where we have a lot of companies, right? Uh, and because I have worked in Bangalore, I know the scale.
Right.
Like, you can drive 2 hours and every single building is IT company.
Correct.
And that people don't realize here in Silicon Valley, that how many companies are there. Well, Silicon Valley itself has a lot of companies. So I think Indian AI landscape is more about building products and adopting these technologies,
Mm-hmm.
while Bay Area is combination of both. It's a building products, while it's more or heads down on the research side of the AI, and that's expected because a lot of universities and academic institutions are here.
Right, right. Interesting. And in terms of the community there, so do you see similar kind of workshops, etc., which happen? I know again, for example, conferences like NeurIPS obviously
Yeah,
have the workshops, but
yeah.
in general, I mean, is that something which happens, and then do people look forward to it?
Uh, so, um, so what I realized, Kunal, the quality of workshop which happened at Data Hack Summit,
Hmm.
it's really high bar.
Okay.
So we have lot of, and I tell you, because I have attended like gazillion workshops, I have given gazillion workshops,
Yeah.
and what I realize, so normally when somebody is talking, they normally you provide the introductory hooks, and you have to go and discover them and make it work fully. They will provide some code samples, but the workshop which we did at Data Hack Summit, I was talking to Sanyam, um, and and the way we have structured those workshop,
Yeah.
and including my workshop which I did, it was very end to end. It's
Right.
much more comprehensive. So I would say that level of comprehension in workshop, it's not easily available
Yeah.
even here.
Yeah.
We normally have workshops here where you have code samples and you discuss some theory part and you run from top to bottom.
Right.
But the way we did the workshops there, it was a holistic experience of taking a software engineer and enabling him to become a Gen AI engineer. And
Correct.
that intensity of workshop is not easily available even in Bay Area.
Mhm, mhm.
Though, and normally it's very hard to find full day workshop here.
Yes.
Normally they have like 60-minute, max 90 minutes or so, because just before I traveled to India, I attended this Ray Summit
Mhm,
workshop. It was happening at Ray's office in San Francisco, and that was like I would say like 2 hours workshop, and
mhm.
it was code intensive, but they were not discussing anything like to take a naive engineer and enable him to do this thing. They assumed deep learning, transformers and everything.
Okay.
While the workshop which we did at Analytics in Vidhya, we tried to enable people, and that's the difference in tone. Of course, few conferences has much more comprehensive, but there's a lot of assumption, in the sense what you already know.
Correct.
But that was the difference in Analytics Vidya's workshop.
Sure. Great, great. Thanks, thanks. I mean, I was just trying to learn about the ecosystem, and so let's start maybe briefly going through your journey, and then how did you kind of get into AI and computer vision more specifically. So I just want to know your story from yourself in terms of how has been this journey, and then I mean, I've seen you. done multiple ventures, you've been part of great initiatives. So would just want to hear from you in terms of how that journey happened.
Yeah, sure, Kunal. I'm happy to share. So, as you know, you might know, I'm basically a computer science engineer. I did my undergrad, and I did around 6 years. I worked in Bangalore for companies like Cisco, Oracle, and so. And then around 2010, I moved to US.
Hmm.
And then I was working for some company in LA, Southern California, Edison. Um, and that time and I was computer science engineer, but it's the time when the financial crash just happened in 2008.
Right.
And I thought I want to become investment banker that time. So
Okay.
I and I came, and then I shifted to Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and I studied CFA.
Okay.
And it was a lot of blood and sweat
Yeah.
because
And
I
which
was from
which
computer
level
science.
did you clear?
I did level one, level two, and level three. I did half.
Okay.
Um, but there's an interesting story because when I did level two and during my candidacy of level three, I joined BlackRock. And I joined BlackRock, and BlackRock, as you know, it's a very fancy company. People dream to work there as an investment banker, and I got that job. It was all very nice. And I used to live in a city called Foster City. It is like some 12 miles from Stanford. And one fine weekend, what happened? I got invitation from somebody I knew for deep learning Bay Area deep learning school. It is a small organization done by Andrew Yang himself and his PhD students.
Correct.
And I happened to go on weekend there, and that discussion started around 8 in morning at Stanford's Global School of Business. And by 8:15 there was a hardcore calculus on the screen,
Wow.
and it was like pretty intense because I did not had a breakfast. I was feeling already lightheaded. But what happened in those 2 days, you can imagine, if you imagine every single AI rock star of today's world, he was almost in that room.
Right.
And 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 I was so naive, I did not know any of them. In
Mhm.
fact, most of them were not famous that time because many of the famous people's PhD was not done. For
Right.
example, Richard Socher was there, Andrej Karpathy was there,
Yeah.
Russ Salahuddinov was there, and Sammy Banjo was there, Jeff Dean was there, Andrew Yang himself was there, and many
Yeah.
rock stars of today's AI world. And but that weekend, I realized how big of change it's gonna be. In
Yeah.
fact, Andrew himself, and this is the time when PyTorch was not born, TensorFlow was not
Correct.
born. In fact, the famous statement of AI is new electricity, it
Right.
was not said by Andrew Yang.
By that
He
time.
Yeah, and he said that statement on the same stage after 2 months.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
I was in that room, and so what happens? One of the very pivotal moment when I realized that AI is going to be changing the world. He entering in room, he has asked how many people are doing studying radiology here,
Mm.
and some 15 or so folks from Stanford raised their hand. And then he said, you have to consider how the radiology is going to change because
Change.
of these technologies.
Mm.
And he explained how the universal approximation theorem is going to write new functions, and we are in the age of where we'll have a semantic functions written. You will just describe the function and function will write itself.
That's true.
As we know, Microsoft and many companies are already doing that.
Yeah.
So that particular weekend, I decided, okay, I'm going to change my career.
Wow.
And I came back home, and I was talking to my wife, and I had a very young family, 8-month old in my family. And my wife said, like, you spent like 3+ years studying CFA, and
You are in the
um,
place where you dreamt to be. Now
yeah,
you're.
yeah, and now you want to switch. And I said, no, I really feel it, and it's not just another buzzword, and it was not even buzzword that time. So
Mhm.
then I decided I'm going to switch my career. I left my job at BlackRock,
Mhm.
and I literally zoomed out map and saw which is the nearest office from my home, and
Wow.
that happened to be Oracle. Their HQ in Redwood City. So I just joined Oracle there.
Hmm.
And since then I registered myself to the masters from Georgia Tech in machine learning. And of course there's like here, because being Silicon Valley, you get to meet a lot of interesting people who are doing similar things, uncountable number of meetups. In fact, I would say if you live in San Francisco, it's very hard that you will have a dinner at home. You will have dinner at some conference, because there are so many happening. And since then I trained myself and I did a lot of work at Oracle. Actually, even before Oracle, when I was doing CFA, as you know, CFA is a lot about statistics
Right.
and the numbers and heteroscedasticity of data and so on. So I had a data background, a
Mhm.
numerical methods background. But when I started doing machine learning and deep learning, I realized actually a lot of things are fitting in together. So my finance background, my computer science background, and my machine learning and deep learning, they all helped me to be at the place where I was well poised to use this technology to do the. So of course, luck is in the play here as well,
Mhm.
but it's very interesting, like how one weekend can change your life, and it happened to me.
Very interesting. In fact, I mean, just sharing the similarity. So, I pursued CFA as well till level three, and
Oh, I see.
I think my transition was slightly more gradual. Probably I didn't get the company of the elites you had, but yeah, I first moved into analytics and then kind of started learning from there. So great to hear that. And then once that happened, right? So how did you kind of immerse yourself, and then so what
Yeah.
happened next after that?
Yeah, so when I started, of course, it was like much harder to implement anything, for because the very first neural network which I have written, it was written in Octave.
Right.
And of course, I did Andrew Yang's very famous course, and that was like dipping the toes. But how I pursued transition of my career from being a computer science engineer to applied AI engineer, by finding projects by myself. For example, in my previous jobs, I formed the problem statements, and I tried to work on them in my additional times. And when people saw that it is possible, because this new way of thinking where you can design an arbitrary function which can search for 1 billion if statements,
Yeah.
it's not very traditional computer science way. And
Mhm.
when they see these examples, they realize the power, and that's how I gained more opportunities to work on these. For example, I remember in early days of AI, sentiment analysis was the poster child of
Yeah.
NLP.
Correct.
And I happened to work with Jeremy Howard of Fast.ai's
Right.
um, in-person course here in San Francisco. And while doing that work, I interacted with a lot of community members. For example, many of the very famous folks, if you might have heard of Jason Antic, he's the creator of Deoldify,
Right.
and he happened to be. He presented his Deoldify at GTC conference of NVIDIA,
Right.
and he's the one who started AI with Fast.ai. So I
Correct.
realized like, a lot of folks who have done like very different work in history, but when they did the right amount of training and adoption of these technologies, they did humongously well. Like many many people are very famous. For example, you might know Sarah Hooker, who is at Google DeepMind. She did very well, and her background was not, I believe she was from economics background from Stanford, if I'm not wrong. And she is like very amazing researcher. And there are many people who I know who are not from typical research lab setting,
Yeah.
but they did amazingly well. In fact, I'm remembering a name, because one of the most famous question, maybe I think 3 or 4 years ago, people used to ask, "Is it mandatory to do the PhD or masters to achieve to do well in this
Data
domain?"
science. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's absolutely not needed. And
Correct.
this thing, like of course as an engineer we know, right, we know what we can achieve. But this understanding I got vetted by many different people, including Jeremy Howard himself and Andrew Ng, because his office is like a mile from my office. So many times I got chance to meet him at the conferences, and I was talking to them. And there are some meetups happens in Palo Alto, and these people have explained that you absolutely don't need any PhD or MS to just to use this technology. Of course, if you want to extend the field and go in the research side, or you have liberty of doing PhD. For example, for me, I did not had liberty of doing PhD because I'm already doing job. I have family, and I'm not in that age cycle where I can dedicate 4+ years to just to study a topic. So if you're an engineer, I would like to say it's just another way of doing software engineering. It has a lot of mathematical backing, but just to become a practitioner, you just need right information and hand holding, and you absolutely don't need PhD. And you know what? So Jeremy Howard, in one of the discussions, he said that uh, there are like millions and dollars worth of spending happens in many very famous AI labs. Of course, we should not name them, but the amount of work, the throughput which they do, is not that significant compared to the expenditure they do. When I say this statement, it means that similar amount of value addition can be done from very humble two people research. For example, um, there is a very old uh, person, and not very old, maybe in his in 70s, I believe. His name is Leslie Smith, and I believe he's a retired from Navy, and he has done amazing amount of research from his house in Tennessee, I believe, or I might be sure about this place. But for example, one of the research paper he did, it's called um, super convergence or something like and that thing was so fundamental in training efficient neural networks that people almost missed it, because he is not who is traveling to all these fraternity talks and all those things. But uh, so and that technique was picked up by the fast.ai. In fact, Leslie Smith himself gave a talk with Jeremy Howard, and that talk was very enlightening to me, in the sense I realized that because these things are so fundamental in the way they get developed,
Yeah.
basic understanding of calculus, maths, algebra is enough to do cutting edge work.
Right.
So that's where answer to your question comes in, that if you're a software engineer who have studied, you have some mathematical background, even if you don't have much mathematical background, you can still come in this domain and make your mark very soon. And because in the, for example, if you see the Falcon 40B, the amazing GPT-4 open source competitor,
Yeah.
it came from Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
And when we hear these things, we say, oh, maybe it will come from Silicon Valley or East Coast, or Equali in Paris or Switzerland, or maybe IITs or wherever.
Yeah.
But we didn't imagine it to come from there, and that institute is doing very well. In fact, this morning they released Falcon 180B,
180.
which is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't need much of academic backing. If you can't afford it, you can directly go and start working on it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think technology is obviously a great leveler in that sense that a lot of things which are almost un heard of, or you couldn't even think about it, are now possible. I mean, the pace at which ChatGPT proliferated, right? I
Yeah.
mean, no other product in history has proliferated so quickly. Uh, uh,
Yeah, and just to add to that, Kunal, so what happened? We had like 2018, 19 when computer vision's aha moment happened, and
yeah,
then the chat GPT came last year, and the NLP's aha moment happened.
correct.
And I predict and I feel really that the next aha moment will be about combination of these two, when people will say all the text to image and image to text type of technologies. For example, I know few, I can't name them, but very big manufacturer of the cell phones. They are working on the technology where none of the GIFs emojis, they will be pre-curated. You just type the text and it will be generated on the fly.
Right. Right.
In fact, all the camera, so you know that in all the phones we have, you take the photo and you do edit button, and that edit button soon will have a text box. Just type how you want to edit and it is going to happen. and
Right.
and many companies like Sony, Panasonic, they are working on these technologies to uh, and that will be the next aha moment. Will people will say, oh my god, text is image, and that saying, right, image is worth thousand words. Probably it will become like image is worth like 10 words. You write the 10 words and it will understand your context and generate the images. I think that's next thing coming up.
Correct, correct. Very no, very true. In fact, I mean, another news which has been doing rounds recently is Google in Pixel is going to give the magic audio eraser capabilities,
Yes.
and so a lot of these things which I mean used to be uh, lab features or lab experiments are
Yeah,
now
but they're now in production. Yeah.
mainstream. And then I think yeah, it's very exciting to see the possibilities as it unfolds, and then the thing which it enables. Uh, Coming back to so what was your aha moment with generative AI? I mean, when the so looking back on last maybe few years, few quarters, uh,
Yeah.
when did it surprise you?
Yeah, so as far as the generative and AI concerned, I was surprised in January of 2021. So
Okay.
what happened, you know, that very famous paper, clip paper, came out.
Yeah.
And when I read that paper, so in hindsight, it's like, if you're a deep learning practitioner, you understand the vector space, hyperdimensional space, how to deal with this. It becomes very obvious, and we see, oh my god, it's just the, yeah, and we have been using VA for a few years, and in a sense it's a traditional concept, but with advent of deep learning, VA has become much more powerful. Um, and when I saw the clip paper, it really hit the chord with me.
Yeah.
And I was talking to my wife that now, um, and when I saw that paper, I remembered the statement given by Andrew in one of the conferences, and he said, I'll be surprised if in 10 years blindness will be considered as much of disability as it is today. And I realized, okay, of course, for technology, in short term we overestimate and long term we underestimate.
Understood.
But when I saw the clip paper, I can see as a daylight why it will change how image and text interact. In fact, they both get converted into latent space, and that the space and that latent space is your understanding of the context. And around like 3 or 4 months ago, Facebook AI research has released the model called image bind,
Hmm. Yeah.
and that has really knocked the socks off, in the sense, what it can do, it is the combination of image, audio, and the visuals of it.
Hmm.
So what you can do, if you write text, it can generate video and the audio for this text. And if you have a video, it can generate audio and the text for the same. And if you have audio, it can generate the video and text for the same.
Wow.
So, and this is called image bind. So
Fine.
what does it mean? It means that your two senses, eyes, uh, ear, and tongue, they are being fused into
One.
one thing.
So
And that is really new age we are living in. So the statement which Andrew said about blindness, I would say maybe in future, uh, being deaf will not be as much. Of course, senses are not just about utility; it's just about the pleasure as well. So that factor yet remains
right.
unexplored. But as far as the utility and navigating the world, I believe these technologies are just at the place where they will amaze everybody, and it will be like good value addition to humanity as such.
Yeah, and also the possibilities which it unlocks in
Yeah.
general, right?
Yeah.
When just the movement from something which is prediction based to something which is generative has been
Generative
such a
as well.
transformation. The minute
Yeah.
you do it in a multimodal space, that obviously takes it to the next level. Uh,
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, if you see, the type of hysteria which we are experiencing now, when the GANs came, Ian Goodfellow's model.
Yeah.
Um, so everybody was amazed. Everybody's amazed. Oh, it's good, but it did not create that wave of excitement.
Correct.
But when the text got fused with the images and it becomes more conversational, my God, the possibilities are amazing.
Correct, correct. I think, yeah, lot of it has to do with the UI UX of how the experience
Yeah,
was released,
indeed.
and how relatable it was for a lot of people, right? So for people like us who have seen this kind of evolve, I mean, I remember GPT-2, I think, where it was able to create a few meaningful sentences when you give a prompt, right? So I could extend when this came out that, okay, for me personally, GPT-2 was a bigger aha moment than 3.5. uh, but for a layman, just simplifying it and then releasing it in that format, I think was really
Yeah, I think OpenAI did behave like Google in this sense. So what happens? Google's philosophy is they let the product bake itself,
correct.
and then they release. And when GPT-2 came, and it was not publicly available, and they were releasing GPT-3, and I heard a talk from one OpenAI engineer. I believe it was Stumel, some podcast, and they were talking it's too dangerous to release to the public,
Correct.
and and during some discussion, Jeremy Howard says that if researchers can't evaluate it, you cannot say it's too excellent and dangerous. Um, and to a lot of degree, I was aligned with Jeremy that time. But now, in hindsight, when I see the impact of it,
Yeah,
because amount of misinformation it can create, actually those people knew the power of it.
correct.
And with GPT-4, they released it in more mature manner, more controlled manner. So I believe they did it gradually, while to the word it looks it happened.
It
um,
happened.
so yeah, I think it's a lot to see how they did very well, because it's just not about the product, how they executed, how the user experience was designed, and so on. Hats off to them.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. No, and then quite a. I mean, as a engineer, right? It's a phenomenal example of a doing the work, but how do you release the work to the world is equally important in terms of
Yeah.
making sure that its side effects are curtailed to the extent possible, and then the
Yeah.
experience is improving itself. So I think.
Yeah, and
Case.
on that regard, I would like to mention, Kunal.
Mhm.
So I have been following analytics Vidya for almost like the day it was started, I would say.
Okay.
Like, because we have a common friend, Gunjan,
Right.
and through that I came to know, and I was following. So I would say, for example, I talked to a lot of researchers here at Stanford, Berkeley, and you'll be amazed how many people read analytics Vidya. So why I'm mentioning that is that you really serve the community in the way it should be. For example, a lot of complex topics, you search it and randomly analytics with this article comes at top, and it's not just the SEO happening, it's just the pure quality content.
Content.
And I see the whole article is top to bottom self-sufficient. And because I happen to be sort of like bookish person, so the quality of that content itself is so inviting to read. So I realized the way you guys have curated your knowledge engine, which is serving the topic,
Yeah.
it's very high in quality. And I'm saying that because I'm part of like Forbes Technology Council. I read a lot of articles, and people have written, well edited articles, and I'm sure a lot of work from the copy editing and editors do on that.
Yeah.
When I compare your articles with that, it really mind boggling. So I realize the user experience which you guys have created in this domain, it's really commendable. For you, it's just the one thing you're doing, but
Yeah.
overall as a community, it's enabling a great wave of AI engineers.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure down the line after 5 years, when you'll see a handset, you realize, oh my god, what you have created. But I can feel it at this very moment that it's serving a lot of people amazing content.
No, thanks for sharing that. And then, yeah, I think in our DNA, that's something which you've built very diligently. That every piece of article or content which goes out
Yeah.
has to be top notch and has to abide with what we stand for. So
Yeah, I can really feel it every single article. Even for the some like very off topic which are not mainstream, the article is written so nicely. It can, as it is, be published to the paper. But I really love reading all the content you guys. In fact, I was talking to a person yesterday in Palo Alto.
Mhm.
Um, he happened to be building his autonomous drone company from
Okay.
scratch, and he left his job, and he's doing very cutting edge work.
Mhm.
He's from Stanford, and he said that he reads your you guys,
Okay.
and that was and that and that and then I happened to mention that I'm going to talk to them tomorrow,
Mhm.
and he was saying, okay, it seems these guys are very good, and he's not Indian, and um, he's here only, so yeah, so it's just emblem for you guys.
Right. Thanks. No, we hope we'll continue to build this and then
Yeah,
have a bigger impact. Uh, Coming to Sandeep, the work which you're doing currently, and then so can you tell what does your current role look like? What are the kind of problems you're solving,
yeah,
and how do you see next few uh, you know quarters or next few years is slightly longer time frame, but
yeah.
I'll leave it up to you in terms of how you see next few months, quarters, years.
Yeah, so I basically work for a company named Beans.AI. So basically, we are a location intelligence platform, and it's a little bit of mouthful. But what does it mean? It means if you want to do something with your destination location, you want to deliver something, you want to plan something, urban planning or disaster management, um, emergency response type of work, then knowing location of some particular interest is paramount. For example, uh, n- here we have a lot of apartments, same as Bangalore, and finding the right look unit in big apartment complex is really challenging. In that, when you are in business of efficiency, for example, you want to deliver something, you are a firefighter or
Yeah.
emergency response or something like that. So on that philosophy, founders of this company have built. They are Nitin Gupta and Akash Agrawal. They both are from your same college, IIT Mumbai. Uh,
That's correct.
as- so what we do basically, we build location intelligence to the extent of platinum level of information.
Hmm.
What does it mean? It means basically, in a lot of cases, our location instructions are so accurate, even a bot can deliver a pizza. um, and not many companies have been working to build this type of data.
Correct.
um, and in many ways we are preparing for the future, in the sense, we know in future a lot of deliveries will be automated, it will be done by the bots, there is no confusion about it.
Yeah.
But we will not have that type of instruction and infrastructure. We know infrastructure will change over the course of years, but if we have that database built for that type of information, we can have a great impact. And that's what we have built. And our big one few of the biggest customers are like FedEx and other grocery companies who use us to deliver things efficiently. And
Hmm.
imagine if you have 40 pounds of grocery and you park at one place, and you unload the groceries in your hand and you realize you parked at the wrong place, and then you load the groceries again and go, and so it wastes them for like 5 to 6 minutes each delivery, in many cases like 15 minutes.
Hmm.
And for them, for whole day, it's a significant amount of
Correct.
cost.
Yeah.
So we remove that inefficiency. We exactly tell you where to park, after parking where to walk, and where to walk inside your building, which where is the elevator, where is gate. It's like you've seen that movie, right? Minority Report. When
Twitter.
he's driving, it tells where to go.
Yeah.
We we are really building that kind of data. And we are more than two-thirds of US. Exact numbers I don't have, but we have already mapped US, and currently we are embarking on journey of mapping nearshore Canada. We are working with Japan Post. We are working with Post Malaysia, and we did every day we are having new partnership because after working here we realized that location is inherent part of everything we do,
Yeah.
be it professionally, non-professionally, recreationally. Location is everywhere, and it matters a lot. So my role here has been to basically take care of everything machine learning, deep learning, or computer vision, or any sort of optimization we do. A lot of initial work which I have done, it was about the satellite imagery detections, shape matching, detection, segmentation, and that sort of work. And we have many models running in production, which gets used by our multiple apps and the APIs, which gets used by our customers. But we have other part of work which I do. It is about the machine learning, traditional optimization sort of technique, and we also do our own version of heuristic based clustering,
Okay.
and our own version of traveling salesman problem. So we have done, and it's an NP hard problem, it cannot be solved, but we have done our own optimization, our own heuristics, capacity planning, fleet management, and so on. So it has a lot of pieces, but my role is basically to do all thing deep learning, machine learning, and optimization.
Wow, interesting. And then uh, this would be very location context specific problem. For example, I mean, even if you had all the data, but just you move from, let's say, US to UK, a
Yeah.
lot of these things would change all of a sudden, right? So every market
Yes.
in that sense would be very different. So your algorithms would need to kind of learn that and then adjust that accordingly.
Yes, Kunal, great that you asked this question, because this question has a very deeper inspiration for a deep learning engineer. So
Exactly.
what happens? Because if you train just on the say Chicago, Austin, and US data, the building structures are totally different than India or Europe,
Yeah.
and you cannot use the same model there, and that's why. Uh, and the concept drift and data drift will happen. So what we have done, we have designed our own data flywheel hard negative mining sort of engine,
Hmm.
where we adapt to areas, and it learns. For example, when we're doing our own version of building footprint detection, we curated data from US countries and the European countries that time, because in Europe most of buildings have a red roof, and it has a slant roof of two sides, one side with more sun, another side less sun. So our algorithm had to do special provisions to accommodate that, and that's a very deep. From deep learning engineers' perspective, it's a good thing to think. So whatever is your model doing now, you have to think what it might get asked to do in future,
Future.
and change your process to have the provision. Don't do it fully
Correct.
in interest of time, but think about the provisions you might have to do in future, because it will have a smaller embedding. And a lot of time what happens, sometimes you can, in most of the time you can do the transfer learning and retrain and overfit and fine tune, but in some cases it doesn't make sense. For example, I know when we were building like one specific type of model, for example, the detecting the type of roof, and in fact that is the most cutting edge work I would say I have done, where we have a model which tells whether two colors of roofs are similar or not.
Wow.
And in satellite imagery, right, the sensors are very feeble, they are not very HD,
Correct.
and most of the gray colors are there. But and color similarity, what can happen if you have like 50 pairs of colors and you ask two different humans, there will
Correct.
be a lot of discrepancy.
Yeah.
So we had to do the some innovation where actually the human definition of color perception has to be accommodated. And
Wow.
that's where we did a lot of innovation in the sense, and we did a lot of iterations, and we have invented our own algorithm which understands the textures of roof and then understands the color profile of the roof. And that's where real power of universal approximation theorem emerged. We use deep learning for that, and it's amazing like how good it works. And sometimes what happens, um, our customers will say, "Oh, these two colors are not same," and engineers will go and see, and they, "Oh no, they are same." Actually, maybe their monitor has some problem or something. So in a way we got like so better in detecting color profile
Mm.
thanks to deep learning, that it has created us so many new solutions and adaptation to different environment geographies and so on, as you said. And it was possible because we had like robust provisions early on,
Right.
in terms of how we are going to use these solutions.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I think it's a topic where we can probably spend hours, but
Yeah.
just interest of time. How do you see, let's say, next few quarters or maybe years in terms of any areas? It could be computer vision, it could be generative AI, deep learning. What are some of the key trends which?
Yeah, I think two things will is like, I'm almost like sure it's going to happen. And so in computer science fraternity there has been term they call it semantic kernels.
Mhm.
What basically it means, so kernels is nothing but a fancy word of saying function, and
Right.
it does something predefined. But what will happen, and right, in enterprise how they write software, somebody writes the software that gets checked in, it's being used, some bug comes, some next engineer will come, it will change the code, and it will understand it partially, and things will go, and it will keep building, and slowly your code becomes like 20 million lines of code, and it's very muddy, nobody can understand whole thing. Um, but what will happen in next, I would say, like 1 year for sure, people will start writing what, not how.
Oh,
They will just write what, and that what will work inherently.
yeah.
So as we know, right? So how the functions and methods will be written, especially the information processing engines, they will be just defined, and people will use it. For example, we know, right? uh, and this will happen more and more in the domains where it's not like mission critical, in the sense it's
Correct.
not life and death or profit or loss.
Yeah.
In the sense, for example, if you're uploading your scrolling your Facebook feed, if it didn't load, you will just retry again
Try
and
again.
kill the
Or if I'm
application.
sending marketing communications,
Yes, yes,
the
the probabilistic
yeah,
word.
exactly.
So in those domains, I would say like uh, less concrete code will be written,
Correct.
but more abstraction will be written.
Will be written.
So, and I can see it as a daylight that people will not be writing concrete code.
Yeah.
Um, um, but again, there is a little bit of play off because these technologies are stochastic in nature. They are not very deterministic, but I'm sure in future we will have more knobs. Like we have a temperature currently, you can do temperature zero, it will always do the same thing. um, Almost.
Yeah.
But I think that the way we are writing software will change drastically in 12 months, specifically the non-mission critical enterprise software. It will change a lot. And in fact, Microsoft has already released open source library, and its name is actually Semantic Kernel. You
Because-
can import it and you can define what it has to be, and you can hook it up to any of the LLMs, and it will do what it's supposed to do. So that is first change, and that is where the software engineers have to rethink semantic way,
Goals.
because we are very concrete people. We worry about every single if else. We are not in habit of thinking abstract,
Right.
um,
Right.
until we are asked to. So now is the time when every software engineer has to think abstract in abstractions, or for example chain of thought sort of solutions.
Correct.
So that is definitely going to happen in enterprise software landscape. And other thing what I think is the entertainment industry, especially the social media aspect, it is going to be changed upside down.
Hmm.
Social media will not be same in next 2 years what it is today,
Yeah.
uh, because the hyper engines available now, they can really and all the bots and everything, so it will be very hard to find the meaningful content if things don't get changed.
Change.
Because I can write my Twitter bot, it can keep interacting with the whole world, it
Correct.
will have all the seemingly it will be spontaneous and all those things. But what will happen, these social media companies and entertainment industry companies, they have to catch up on these things and they will change how we interact. For example, actually, one more thing I would like to add, which
Hmm.
I was contemplating with one of the engineers from Facebook AI Research. So right, Meta has renamed itself, become Meta,
Yeah.
and they were really bullish on metaverse. But what I feel like, with advent of all these generative AI technologies, the avatars, they will not look like cartoon.
They
They
would
will look like you and me.
100%, 100%.
100%. So
Yeah.
what will happen? Your avatar will not be avatar. Your avatar will be you,
Correct.
and that is just around the corner.
That is
That is just around the corner. In fact, many social media companies and other industries are already using it. For example, in China, news readers are virtual, and there are so many companies like
yeah.
Dscripts and Phasia and so on. I would say like metaverse really can pick it up, not in the current form, in the form where you are you and you are
Yeah.
not card. For example, I would love to do a meeting with somebody in virtual Zoom where the avatar looks like me
Yeah.
and maybe he is well
And that
dressed.
that actually could take away a lot of challenge in the virtual meetings today.
Yes,
If it actually starts feeling me with my own kind of body parts and
yeah,
my own, then I think yeah, the divide between virtual and physical
yeah,
could
it will be
blur.
faded like it.
Correct.
And right, Kunal, there is no way it's not going to happen.
Correct.
It's just around the corner. In fact, I would say maybe after four or so years, the virtual headsets like Meta Quest and all those things, Oculus, they will have real people. And once it comes there, metaverse will become actual universe of main business universe, and
Correct.
people will, until it's for the sensory purpose, people will not prefer to do real video sensor meeting. They will prefer to do the my avatar version of meeting.
Correct.
And that creates, as you said, imagine how people will behave, right? How the meetings will happen. I would say if that happens, the remote work will go in on steroid,
On steroids. Yeah, yeah. 100.
right? So I think, and you and me, we can see it as a daylight that it is going to happen. There's no way it's not
Question of
happen.
time. It's not a question of whether it would happen or
Yeah, it just,
not.
I think they're already doing it. I believe Microsoft, they have laid off a lot of HoloLens people,
HoloLens.
and they are redoing it in some new form. And I believe it will be like mind blowing in terms of
That's true. And then the other, I mean, angle which we didn't discuss is, Apple introducing Vision Pro, and then I mean
yeah,
that would just take the adoption to the next level. So on one side you have
yeah,
more people adopting it, the technology coming together, and then making it
yeah,
more realistic, and then
yeah.
obviously the adoption can kind of
Yeah, great that you mentioned. I think Apple Vision Pro is just the start of that phenomena.
exactly, exactly,
I
like
think
like the iPhone moment for
iPhone moment. I think they are doing it again. New
correct.
iPhone moment for virtual workspace. Um, yeah, I think every company will have, including Google or whatever. Google has this Star. I'm sure you know that Google has this Starlink project, the video conferencing one.
Yeah,
And I saw that. My God, I think
I've only
only.
seen videos, but it definitely feels so realistic in terms of
Oh my God, it's out of word. You really want to touch them and
touch.
feel
Yeah,
like how's that possible? And oh my God, I think every company will have that. I think that moment is already here. It's just being productized.
yeah, yeah. Interesting, very interesting. I'm just cognizant of time, so a few questions.
Yeah, sure.
So, you know, let's say if you were starting your career today, what advice would you give to your own younger self? Uh,
Uh,
what would you kind of what would be the guidance?
Yeah, actually, my advice might seems very cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason because it works.
It works.
And that is so in this domain, what happens? Not many of the new fundamental things you use. For example, you use basic maths, basic probability, conditional probability, total probability rule, and you use little bit of matrix algebra, which is like everybody knows, and you use some advanced calculus form, right? But advanced calculus form is only used when you're doing some fundamental research or changing it. You should have a general understanding, but it's not a mandatory piece. So what
Mhm.
it means the basic ingredients needed to do well in this domains are not much.
Right.
So that means the barrier to entry is really low.
Low, and it will further go down. To be honest, I mean,
Yes, yes.
people saying that English is going to be the most common programming language now.
Programming language. It's a great that you said that because that is going to be true.
Yeah.
English is what will be the main programming language, and and you can imagine the main USP you can bring to your job then will become critical thinking
Critical
or empathy or
attention to details. How well
ha ha how
describe.
well you can think and how thorough you are and those type of things. I think the things which we call soft skill now will become main skill in future.
True.
So what I would say, if you're starting in this domain, you try to build something which works. Of course you can do some toy academic examples, but try to build something, and it can be very basic, uh, which will do something almost not useful, but go and still do it,
Yeah.
because the process of building solution end to end is amazing, and actually it works much more than studying 10 books. So you read one book and try to build something, use online. And one thing you have to imagine here is that this domain is not very structured learning domain. You
Yeah.
cannot say I have a table of content, I'm going to do from top to bottom.
Correct.
It is a more of the tree or branch way of learning, because you have to pick up a lot of concepts on the fly, and suppose you're doing something and you encounter something, you say, oh my god, it's such a basic, how did I know? It's okay, that's how it works in this domain. You
Yeah.
just pick it up. For example, you don't know what is the Hessian matrix, it's okay, it's just the fancy name for something.
Something.
But just go and pick it up, and just learn enough to do your own thing. So first advice I will say, try to build something end to end.
Mm-hmm.
And second advice, which actually I got from Jeremy, and uh, and that is, whatever you're learning, whatever you're doing, just go and write about it. What I mean to say, go write some blog, write some post, write some, and nowadays we are in wonderful world of Hugging Face, where you can send your demo to Hugging Face space, and they can really use your application live in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. So I would say, just whatever you're learning and doing, try to write about it.
Yeah.
So, and when I heard this very first time from Jeremy, I say, suppose I don't have any motivation to be very social media active or whatever. Then what should? And he said that still it will culminate your learning,
Right.
not just to build the following. When you write something about it, you try to make it self-sufficient, and
Yeah.
that practice of self-sufficient will make you think thoroughly.
Correct.
And
The,
that
the flow
those
of
are
thoughts itself, right?
yes.
I mean,
So
you're
I
you're,
would say,
you're talking to someone who loves to blog, so
yeah, yeah, of course. So and of course I was saying the extremely good quality.
yeah,
So I would say, try to build something end to end. And second thing, write about it. It's okay if you think only you will read it, it's fine,
yeah,
because writing is a lot of time the main person being benefited is you. So just go and write it. So these are two main advice, and there are few more concrete advices I can give, like, as I was saying, don't try to stick to a structured learning. Do in silos, learn your things and try to build things. You might not know everything, but it's like building a pyramid. When
Yeah.
you build lower levels, you don't gain any height, but when you build the higher layer, you gain height a lot. And
Right.
that's how this domain is. Initially, maybe 2 months you will say, oh my god, I did not learn anything, but you're building the lower level of pyramid. So I would say you and we are in time where so many amazing resources available. You can really get into this domain and become like 0 to 16 like 2 months.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. That is true. Great, great. Just one last piece,
Yeah,
Sandeep, and there's just to know you better as a person.
yeah,
So, what I want to do is just ask you a few rapid fire questions,
yeah,
and
sure.
just tell whatever first few thoughts come to your mind, right?
Yeah,
And then we'll just do it quickly. So,
yeah, sure.
tea or coffee?
Tea, no coffee.
Windows or Mac?
Linux.
Linux. Okay, great. Night owl or morning person?
uh, Preferably morning person, but practically night owl.
Books or podcasts?
Both.
Both. Okay. And dream booth or mid journey?
uh, Dream both, because it unleashes the power.
Hmm.
Mid journey is closed source, so no way.
Okay. If you were not a data scientist, then what?
I would be a professor.
So,
I would be a professor, no doubt about it.
uh, NLP or computer vision?
As I say, clip moment. So both,
Correct.
in the sense, because now they both are same in latent domain.
Yeah, yeah. No, great. Thanks for taking time out, Sandeep. Loved having the conversation and
Yes, same, Kunal.
learning from
Um,
you all the insights and the stories behind
yeah,
me. Truly,
yeah, and I would say just one last suggestion I had, because I know this podcast, it will reach humongous
Mhm.
number of people. Um, there's a book which I read. It's called Genius Makers,
Okay.
and it is not very any AI academic book. It's just the anecdotes, set of anecdotes. So
Mhm.
if you have not read it, there's audiobook available as well. So I would
Mhm.
say just read that book. It just makes you feel oriented,
Okay.
because you will realize all those legends who have created things are still around, and you get to hear from them in conferences and so on. So just Genius Makers, just read that book, and
Okay.
it's full of anecdotes. It tells about how the Jeffrey Hinton and Alex Krzyzewski and other student, they were Ilya. He was doing the auction of their companies from Lake Tahoe's hotel
Mhm.
over email, and the Google, Baidu, and
Wow.
Microsoft were hitting over the sending like at top of each hour they were sending email,
Mhm.
and the
Mhm.
price got so high that they had to stop the auction. And
Oh, wow.
that thing tells a lot about who we have access to in the modern world. All these people have changed the world. So I would say, if you can, just go read that book, Genius Makers.
Yeah, surprisingly, I haven't come across it yet, but I'll make
It's
sure
a very
I
new book.
do it.
It's very new. It's like, I would say, like 2 months, not more than
Okay,
that.
okay,
Yeah,
interesting. No, I'll order it tonight.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, Great. Thanks a lot, Sandeep. Loved the conversation. Thank you for taking.
Okay, thanks, Kunal. Nice talking to you, and thanks for all the wonderful work.
Sure. Thanks, Sandeep.